Hello, I'm April Anderson Zorn. I'm the University Archivist for Illinois State University, and I am answering questions for hashtag Ask an Archivist Day. So let's go through the questions. The first one is from @goldcutta on Instagram. Does a ghost really haunt Williams Hall? Well, @goldcutta, I am not a paranormal expert, but I will say that Ange Milner passed away in the late 1920s, and that building wasn't constructed until around 1939, opened in 1940. And that building, Williams Hall, actually was the first building to be constructed on this campus to be the library on campus. Prior to that, the library actually was in Old Main, the first building on campus, Cook Hall, in a building that also no longer exists that's right around where Milner and Bone Student Center is now, right on the street really, called North Hall. So it was in those three buildings, and then it moved over to what is now Williams Hall, but at the time was named Milner Library for Ange Milner. So Ange Milner died a good 10 years prior to that building being constructed and opening. And so I always ask, why would you haunt a building that you never even knew existed in your lifetime? Wouldn't you haunt the materials that you cared for and loved and cherished in your lifetime, which, by the way, are part of the University Archives? That's a separate question, and if you want to ask next year on hashtag Ask an Archivist Day, I might answer that question if we have ghosts in the archives. But we do have Ange Milner's papers, and we have a lot of her books still there in archives that I can show you if you ever want to see them. Let's see. So, from Rachel Peoples on Instagram, @Rachel Peoples. Rachel Peoples wants to know more about the cool shelving that was in the photo that we featured for Ask an Archivist Day. So that shelving is actually still in Williams Hall in pieces. That shelving was put in a little later when the building first opened for library, or when it first opened as the library on campus in 1940s. So that shelving does pull out. It's kind of like compact shelving. Sometimes you see in those genealogy shows the shelving that you can kind of turn the turn, and they collapse together. That's kind of the same principle. So those shelves pull out and you can take the book off the shelves. What's interesting though is that as a student, you could not go into the shelves and pull your own book. That wasn't changed until around the late 1960s, early 1970s, that you could, as a student, go in and get your own book like you can now. But prior to that, you went to the front desk and you said, I want this book, and usually a student would go and pull that book for you, and that is one of the students in the photos pulling the book as a request. Let's see, @ISU Police asks on Twitter, in honor of Halloween season, we'd like to know when the first mentions of the ghost of Ange Milner started showing up on campus. How far back have students in Redbirds been enjoying the legend of our favorite campus librarian? Well, @ISU Police on Twitter, I gotta be honest, I don't really know. This is one of those questions that I'm not entirely sure of, but I can say I started around 2011. Stories were plentiful at the time that I started. When I heard about the story, I started to dig back a little bit to see what were the mentions of Ange Milner's ghost on campus. I'm thinking around the 1990s is when Ange Milner's ghost story started to pop up. There's also other ghost stories that I've heard around campus. They're more recent, when South Campus was still South Campus, and we had Atkin, Colby, Hamilton, Witten. There were ghost stories about ghosts haunting both the basement and the roof of that building. And I only started to hear about those about 5 years ago, right before the buildings came down, actually. And some other places on campus. Of course, Ange Milner is our most popular ghost, if you will. But that I want to say probably around the 1990s, and still I don't know what prompted the start of the ghost story. I have heard mentions of Ange Milner's ghost being seen in the windows of Williams Hall, and that students were seeing her through the windows, and then of course the famous story about an ISU police officer patrolling at night and then happening to come across Ange's ghost. I would like to talk to that officer one day, so if that officer wants to come talk to me, I'd love to hear their story. All right, and this one's from Instagram @ETPhoneHome9. So, how did I get in the business? So, every archivist has an individual story. Mine's pretty unique. I started out in theater. I did a lot of theater, and my husband and I met while we were in theater together. I did a lot of backstage technical work, but I always had a love of history. And then I decided one day that my eyesight was starting to go, to be honest with you, but there was also the promise of a little better money. So I decided to get my master's in public history. It's history, but it's a public history concentration, and get my master's in library science, both from the University of Central Florida and Florida State University. And then I got the job here, and I've been here, going almost on 10 years now. I know some archivists that come into the business from English, or they have a humanities background. I know one archivist that has a biology background and got into the business. A lot of archivists get in based on their interests. Say theater archivists, for example, something that I was interested in at the time. I wanted to be a theater archivist and work with theater collections and productions. Very heavily invested in working with theater production collections. Also, I was really into travel and tourism history. So if you want to talk about Disney history and where to find those collections and anything roadside attraction, I'm your archivist, because that was my gig for a long time. But then this obviously attracted my attention, and I've been here working with education archives and working with normal school history archives since. So anybody can get into the archives business from any different discipline or interest. You don't have to just be into history to do archives. Let's see. The other question was, what's the one thing that I would save if the place was burning down? First of all, the place wouldn't burn down because we have great fire mitigation systems in the back. But if there was a fire, see, and you're asking me what my favorite child is to save, and they're all my children, and great ABC soap opera. They're all my babies, and I want to save each and every one of them. I'd probably try to grab a box off the first shelf that's that we've processed. And what I mean by that is that first range of materials are some of the earliest materials that we have at the university. First president's papers, say our first president Charles Hovey, our second president, Richard Edwards. A lot of his family papers are stored there. Those contain not only papers on the history of the university, but they also contain information about early North Bloomington, what would eventually become Normal, and the university, of course. So probably I'd grab the first box I could find, the one that I know had some really great stuff in there, grab it and run. People, I get asked that question, and then people ask, well, wouldn't you save the sword? And I say, yeah, sure, but the sword's metal. So the sword, by the time the fire's put out, the sword will be fine. We can fix the sword. The papers, though, if they burn, you can't fix those papers. So I'd try to grab some of the earliest box of papers I can off the shelf. Let's see. We've got a couple of email questions from Eric Barden. First one is, what is the biggest challenge that I face as an archivist? You know, it's funny, Eric, I was just having a conversation with some friends of mine from back in high school. Our drama teacher, Mary DaCosta, passed away a little while ago, a few weeks ago, so we are eventually going to hold a memorial for her. And as students from her theater days are coming together and finding photos and remembering her, they're finding that they just don't have as much stuff as they remember having. So I think the biggest challenge right now is getting the word out that you don't have to pitch everything. Our generation is in this mindset that you have to pitch everything to have a peaceful life and to have a smooth existence. And where does that come from? If you value some of your high school memorabilia, save that high school memorabilia. If you think that something's important, say an ISU jacket, and you saved it for 30 years, send it to me. I'm a great place to store your ISU memorabilia. So really it's getting the word out, especially for ISU Archives. We save stuff. We save history. We save those memories, and I want those to come to us. We do not have hardly anything for ISU memorabilia and ephemera, say ticket stubs, that kind of thing, from the 1980s to now. And that's understandable because, you know, those classes are still working, still have small kids, and, you know, still in their early lives. But if you have that stuff, we're happy to take that off your hands. Don't just pitch it. Send it to us. We'll take care of it. And if you have things from high school, from college that maybe isn't ISU, go to your historical societies, go to your local history places in town and ask them if they want it or where that stuff would be better served so that you can get it out of your house but also save that history. Eric asks, is there a dream product or software application that would make the job easier? Oh, Eric, all archivists wish there were a better software or a better software application. We have some homegrown applications in our profession. We have some that are professional that makes our jobs a little bit easier. Honestly, it's just a bunch of applications that we bring together to kind of make it all as easy as we can for us. There isn't necessarily one application. I mean, sure, we use Photoshop for photos to make those available. We use something called Archivespace for a content management system. It's really just finding the best product for the right service that we need at that time. And Eric also asks, do you have a trusted company recommendation for purchasing archival supplies and or archival software? Well, software is a little tricky, Eric, so we can talk about that in an email at some point if you'd like. I will say that for purchasing archival supplies, I generally go to two companies. It's Gaylord and it's Hollinger Metal Edge. A lot of archivists in the business go there. Some archivists go to University Products, but those are the companies that we generally in our business go to. I'm sure I'm missing a few somewhere in there, but when it comes to just general archive supplies, that's what we use.